Okay, part two, what needs to change? As we've explored, the world for the learners of today have changed dramatically over the last 3 decades. Our sensory systems have adapted to this new world, and that has had an impact on the way students take in information, process information, and regulate and behave. The rise in screens and the reduction in free-based play learning has had an impact, as well as the changing social landscape, the impacts on the economy, COVID-19, and environmental factors. Generally speaking, we are seeing more structured, overcrowded schedules for both parents and children. We teach and expect kids to learn at a younger age, learn to read, write, play sports, empathize, regulate, and connect. And some brains, this is great. So for some people, no worries at all. But as we've discussed, every brain is different and learns and develops at different rates. So just because one child is ready for daycare or confident at kinder, it doesn't mean that another child of the same age will be. We have more commitments before and after school, more time that the brain is engaged in a task, less time connecting in an unstructured setting, less time outside. And as discussed, this is going to have an impact on the way our brain is being wired. So what can we do? Let's start. We could lower our expectations on kids. We can make time to connect with the students daily, one-on-one. And we can make sure that we have some unstructured time in their day. So for most kids, this is going to be at recess and lunch. And also to acknowledge diversity in learning styles and adapt to suit the students, because when we adapt to diverse learning styles, every learner will benefit. Okay. Safety and belonging. This is Jackson. Jackson is 12. He's a very good conversationalist. He enjoys skiing, skateboarding, and building things. He also has level 2 autism. Jackson has made 2 really good friends in the year below him, and they often like to play at lunchtime and build things from sticks and sand and mud. Jackson is told that because the students are younger than he is, he can't play in the same area as them at lunchtime. He's really upset about this and he starts to withdraw. He doesn't want to go to school anymore. And one day, Jackson is being picked on by a student in his own year level. He ends up punching the student and then he goes into the toilets and punches and kicks holes in the walls, and then he actually rips out a sink. So these case studies that I'm going to talk about are all based on actual people, and obviously I've changed the names. So this happened. He actually ripped out a sink, and this was because he was lacking a sense of safety and belonging. So this is one of those QR codes that you can go back, you can do it now or you can do it later, to scan the QR code and take a moment to write down 2 strategies that you've used in your classrooms to enhance students' sense of safety and belonging. And I'll just touch on it if for those of you that missed it earlier on. All of your answers will be collated, and I'm going to feed it back to BATForce, and Lee will disseminate it to you all so we can all learn from each other. I'm going to add my strategies in there as well. So what can we do? We want to offer accommodations for all students, not just those kids with a diagnosis. We also want to help other students to understand diversity so that they can be aware and supportive. To do this, we could use, a lot of people recommend using social stories or comic strip conversations with a child that might be considered annoying or distracting by other students. And often when kids hear this from other kids, it can be more impactful than coming from a teacher. If in doubt, then draw. We often use here like a scene generator whereby the student will draw the scene of an event that happened to them, and they might draw a speech bubble to say what they said, but then a thought bubble to say what they were thinking. And then the OT or the parent can draw, what they were saying and what they were thinking to help get that person to understand the different perspectives that might have been at play. For the teachers, perhaps there are support groups or compassionate listening sessions for those who are working with complex behaviours a lot, because what we see is that when a teacher is really good at working with these particular kids, they end up getting given more kids. And then as a result, there can be a little bit of burnout. And so getting around these teachers is really important. Understanding and listening to the students, asking them about and even just asking the students how they feel they could create or gain a better sense of safety and belonging in the class, because often kids know they have the answers. Again, accepting all people's differences. Some people find creating a calm corner or a retreat can be really helpful in the classroom. For me, number one priority is always connection. Connection is key. So what happened with Jackson was his mum met with the school, and the school were really accommodating and understanding. The teachers organised for the three friends to be able to play in a common space at recess and lunch. Jackson became motivated to go to school again, and his teachers also started to support friendships for him in his own new level by using peer mentoring strategies. It's important to model and teach self-regulation, because if you're not in a calm and connected state, then you won't be able to hold space for a room full of students in your class. So this is Charlie. He's 8 years old. He loves drawing, climbing, insects, and making things. He's really friendly and empathetic to everybody, and he has ADHD. He has trouble sitting still in class. He's often moving or blurting out and looking around the room. And this can be really frustrating for his teacher, which I'm sure you can all relate to. He's constantly being told off for moving and distracting others, and this makes Charlie even more fidgety and he becomes dysregulated. And it's really not a nice experience for the teacher, who's constantly having to tell him off. Charlie's often kept in at lunch because he's been in trouble, and after this, Charlie's even more fidgety and unable to concentrate. Although he's very clever and good at school, he's always in trouble, and he starts to feel really bad about himself. He starts to not want to go to school anymore. He doesn't want to play with his friends, and he doesn't want to learn. The QR code will take you to a question whereby I'd like you to write down 2 strategies that you can use in your classroom to support regulation for the students and for the teacher. Again, you don't have to do this now. You can do it later on. To support regulation, first we need to make sure that we are ourselves in a calm and regulated state. And as teachers, how can we do that? So I'm going to add these strategies to the spreadsheet, but breath is really important and is your biggest tool in being able to get yourself back into that optimum level of arousal. And I'm going to give you 2 strategies to do that. Creating firm boundaries for teachers is really important. So it's up to you guys to work out when you would like to be able to be accessed by parents and when it's your time. You know, maybe it's you say it's not before school. This is a time for me that I can focus on what I have to do today and get my intention set for the day. So being clear with your communication to families about that might be really important. So setting firm boundaries. Set your intention to regulate and get curious about what your own triggers and glimmers are. So what works for you? What gets under your skin? And get intentional. Know that you're not always going to get it right, and this will lessen your reactivity when you're seeing behaviours in the classroom. For the students, it might be about incorporating interoception skills into learning plans, discussing emotions and body cues, creating your own regulation toolbox. I should have brought mine in, but having like a small sensory toolbox that you can model to students, and when they're calm and connected and you're calm and connected, so that when they are dysregulated, they know what they like, what makes them feel good. And I can send you some ideas on this if that's what you'd like. Incorporating sensory strategies into the child's daily routine, remembering that all nervous systems really enjoy proprioception and breath. So practice this often and take some of the Lego out of the jar so that we're in that optimum level of arousal. And lastly, mindfulness will bring everybody back into their body. So any kind of 30-second mindful activity is gold for the nervous system. So what happened with Charlie? Charlie's family spoke to his teacher about how Charlie was feeling. The teacher also was feeling the same way. No surprises there. They agreed to try some new strategies to support Charlie, and instead of yelling or reacting, the teacher would go in front of Charlie and make eye contact with Charlie and give him a sign or a gesture that they both agreed on, whatever it is. And that was the teacher's way of signaling to Charlie that he needed to refocus. He was also given more time to move his body in class, and he was given a vibrating cushion, which is like a cushion about this big with a really slight vibration in it. And that will bring in his proprioceptive system to calm his nervous system down. He was given some TheraBand around the chair legs and a small fidget toy for his pocket, which is really not distracting for other people. And this made a difference for both Charlie and his teacher. Creating a comfortable sensory experience. So this will support not only safety and belonging, but also regulation in the classroom. This is Hazel. She's 12. She loves playing the guitar and gaming. She has a really good group of friends who she enjoys hanging out with. Outside of school, Hazel is really social, but when she gets into a classroom, she becomes very anxious. She starts refusing to go to school. She is sensitive to low frequency sounds. So that's like, the mower, the air conditioner buzzing in the background, a hand dryer, they're all low frequency sounds. And often she has to cover her ears and her eyes to help her bring her nervous system back into a calm state. She can hear the hand dryers in the toilets at her school from her classroom, and she can hear the air conditioner buzzing behind her and in the classroom next door. Now, most people won't hear these sounds, but Hazel can't stop hearing them. She struggles to make out what the teacher's saying because all of the other noises in the room, the corridor, outside, she can hear her heart beating in her chest, and she's just trying to concentrate on breathing, let alone being able to listen to what the teacher's saying. Think about 3 sensory adaptations that you can make in your classes to provide a comfortable sensory experience for the students. So consider sounds, lighting, visual clutter. Have a look at the walls in your classroom. Are they too busy? Mostly, yes. People will probably say, yes, they're too busy. Temperature, is it too cold? Is it too hot? Aromas and smells, think about that. How can we bring that in? Tactile stimulation. So when you're creating a comfortable sensory experience, you need to think about all of our sensory systems. With Hazel, we looked at her position in the room. We tried sitting Hazel away from the door near the corridor, up the front of the class, and we allowed her to trial some different headphones. So loops, I'm not sure if anyone's heard of them, but they're really great for filtering out low frequency sounds. Also, she tried noise cancelling headphones, and she even tried AirPods with like low subtle sounds. In the end, she preferred loops. Which is great because they're very discreet and she can just take them in and out as she needs to. We also introduced a pressure garment under her t-shirt, which provided a really subtle form of proprioception. And we built in more movement into her morning routine. So when she was coming to school, she was already in a calm, regulated state in that optimal level of arousal. She's learning very happily and is much more calm in class now.
Zoe, can I just pick up on one of your points there, which is that I've heard back from students, is the wall directly behind the teacher. The wall the teacher stands against to teach, having lots and lots of information on that wall, that some students have suggested that can be distracting. Is that?
Oh, yeah, well, it's visual stimulation, isn't it? Yeah. So very few kids will find that calming. Some will, which is why I'm saying
Hard.
you can't suit absolutely everyone. So have a nice even mix. Most people, if there's a lot of visual stimuli against the back wall, the teacher, the kids who are sensitive to that will be just looking at that and not be able to concentrate on what the teacher's saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Lee. Jump in with those questions whenever. So we've got to adapt to meet the learning styles of the student. This is Pete. He's really happy, friendly, and engaging 14-year-old. He has dyslexia and ADHD, and he tries really hard in school, but he doesn't love it. He feels not as smart as the other kids, and he'd rather be out on his mountain bike or hanging out with friends. He plans to do a trade when he's older. Although Pete finds school difficult, he's really he quite enjoys maths. He sits a test, and to his surprise, he does really well. When he gets his marks, his teacher says that because he didn't show his workings out, she can't pass him and he needs to stay in at lunchtime and complete all of his workings out. He becomes really angry and upset. Having lunch and moving his body is a really important and necessary part of his day. And without it, Pete won't be able to engage and concentrate in the rest of his classes. He gets really angry, he yells and swears at the teacher and storms off, and he's feeling even worse about school. Goes home to mum, says, I quit, I'm not going back. I'd like you to take a moment, either now or after the presentation, and write down how you might adapt your teaching styles to meet the unique styles of the learners in your class. When making adaptations, it's really important to consider the learning styles, obviously. Are they auditory learners or visual learners? There's pros and cons to both. And if you're always teaching one way, you're really not giving the kids who learn the other way much of a chance to get on board. Consider processing time. How long it takes for one student is not reflective of the whole class. And I know you guys know this, but just keep it in the back of your mind, particularly for kids who you know might be neurodivergent. Processing speed and working memory is often affected by a diagnosis of ADHD, autism, dyspraxia, dyslexia, dysgraphia. Visual learners, are they visualizers and artists and cinema photographers, or are they verbalizers? Are they arguers, debaters? Some kids will prefer to use images and movies, while others will like reasoning with words and using language. And then consider, are they a social learner or are they a lone learner? Offer them a choice. Some kids will be a lone learner, and if you put them in a group, they're going to be more concerned with trying to fit into the group dynamics than they would be about learning the actual content. So work out, are they going to learn better by themselves or in a group? Going back to Pete, once Pete's mum spoke to his teacher about his diagnosis, his teacher was able to understand more about how Pete's brain works and why he might have missed his workings out. His teacher was actually really impressed that he could do these complex maths problems using a different method, and she provided him with some positive feedback. He got a lot out of this, and he started to enjoy maths more and more, feeling that his teacher believed in him and supported his unique learning style. And lastly, engagement in learning. This is Spencer. He's in grade 1, really creative, curious mind. He's got a huge imagination, friends with everyone. He's really good at art and drawing, and he just loves being around people. When Spencer is asked to write about his weekend, he can't write more than one word in 30 minutes. No matter how much extra time his very supportive teachers give him, he's unable to write down what he did on the weekend. Spencer starts to disengage from his schoolwork. The more he's asked to write, he starts to feel bad about himself and he stops trying. So let's just consider how you are fostering engagement at school in your classrooms. Use the QR code when you get a chance and note down some ways that you can foster engagement in your class. Okay, so focusing on passion and interest. Kids with neurodiversity often have a passionate interest, and you can use this. It's motivating, it creates alternative worlds or personas, it can assist with anxiety and depression, and it's a great source of pleasure. You can use this to explore feelings, thoughts and experiences, and also career options if that's where the child is up to. So Spencer was diagnosed with dysgraphia. His OT and his psychologist provided his teachers with skills and strategies to use when working with dysgraphia. And this included things like talking about what he'd like to write about, using dot points to give him some more prompting, drawing what he wanted to write instead of using his words, using tech like iPads and computers, and taking away any time pressure, because for dysgraphia, time pressure will only make it worse. So giving him more direction so that he didn't get overwhelmed by big questions, really narrowing it down. So kids with dysgraphia, it's really important to think about what you're trying to work on. Is it actually the writing, or is it processing and problem solving? And it's always going to be different depending on what task you're doing, but be as targeted as you can with dysgraphia. When Spencer's teacher wanted him to actually write, instead of giving him a big open question, he'd just say, write one thing down or two things down about your pet dog. And Spencer could write a sentence much more successfully when he was given a bit more direction than when he was just asked to write about his weekend. Okay, so how do we support students now? A little recap. Number 1, we recognise the students in your classroom as unique individuals and respond by making accommodations that support belonging and safety. Number 2 It's time to get curious and reflective about your teaching style and how you view diversity. And number 3, I want you to consider sensory processing in the students that you're working with. I'm going to finish up today by expressing my gratitude for all of the teachers working in classrooms in Australia today. It's my opinion that this very difficult job is only getting more difficult due to the expectations that we are placing on teachers. I'm constantly in awe of the teachers that I'm coming into contact with in my job, and I believe that we ask too much of teachers these days. But for learning to be able to happen, we need to focus on the relationship first, so connection. Managing behaviours in the classroom takes so much time and resources away from learning. If we could realign those resources to focus on relational safety so that young people can feel heard, seen and cared for, perhaps we could enhance the school experience for students and for teachers. The time to put into building relationship matters, and it's what's going to make all the difference to these young minds when they finish school. So instead of focusing on the curriculum, focus on connection. And this is the way into the hearts and minds of all of the students in your class. Thank you so much for listening and getting up early. For those who did, and if you're listening online, thanks for listening too. These are a few resources that I used in creating this presentation. And if you'd like to get in touch to ask me any aspect of what we've touched on today, you can reach out to these contact details. Otherwise, you can go through BATForce. Thank you, Lee.
Okay. Hey, thanks heaps, Zoe. I am quickly popping up the survey for you to complete if you've watched today, because it's really important we use this feedback so we can continue on. Can everyone see that? Can I just get a yes if people can see that survey up? Yep, thanks for that. I suppose just while you're doing that survey, I want to reflect on, I graduated into teaching in 1991, and I didn't know so much of this, and even with a psych background as well, that there's always opportunities for us to learn new things. And it's not that we've been doing anything wrong, it's just that new information comes up. So every time we take this in, it's about how we take it back to leadership. I'm presenting in schools all of the time, and I absolutely echo what you say about teaching is a really tough job in modern teaching. But how do we let leadership know what you need as a teacher to be able to connect? I'm working on a piece of work at the moment, which has come out of feedback with year 5, 6s about how we connect with our school, with the students, because we're really hearing that with 5, 6s, that they don't even want to come and tell teachers when something's going wrong, because they have a real sense that they're supposed to fix stuff themselves, that there's that real sense in that year 5, 6 cohort that it's their job to fix stuff. So looking at what we're doing, our Ready to Launch, I'm actually changing it up a little bit so we can have that conversation with the teachers in the classroom. So if schools are interested, let us know and we can do that. Zoe's talked about, Jonathan Haidt, Karen Young's book, Austin Perlmutter's work, Daniel Amon's work. There's already a link to all of that on the Schools Wellbeing Hub on our BATForce website. So there's a support board on there with links to all of that work. There's also some links to some content around neurodiversity, so Zoe didn't have to backtrack over that again this morning. Again, we'll have Zoe's contact details in if you have any more information. This will be available, so if you've got friends or colleagues that you feel would benefit from this, this will be available online in the next few days too. So the BATForce Hub, Naomi and Kylie will also send out links to it. So people have got questions, let us know now, because I'm really mindful a lot of you are really excited about getting back to class. And those QR codes too will be available to you when we send the email out to fill in those forms, because it'd be great, because what Zoe's going to do is build a bit of a resource that we can send back. No.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Sorry, I might have missed the first 30 seconds of the presentation. By the way, that was excellent, amazing, totally worth getting up early for. Really impressive. Thank you. I'm not sure if I heard whether or not we're allowed to have the PowerPoint. I might have missed that.
Yep. Yeah. You'll get the PowerPoint and you'll get the full recordings.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Oh, I really appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, and look, we appreciate it. I mean, we know how much you do, and also dyscalculia strategies. Jacinta will find some links and put some more information. I'll catch up with Zoe and put some information on the Schools Wellbeing Hub. So, Kylie, what we do is the information that comes up in this, we put in the Schools Wellbeing Hub so you can go back to it.
Awesome. Thank you.
So, Jacinta, give us a couple of days and we'll get that down. Is there any other things that you want to know more about?
Oh, actually, I do have one question. Oh, sorry. Now I feel like I'm overtaking. I'm in a little bit of a dilemma with play-based learning versus explicit teaching with literacy, because we have to equip. I've taught all the way up to year 11. So if there's too many gaps by the time they hit middle and senior school, they disengage because they don't have the literacy skills. So it's this dilemma in the junior primary classroom, particularly foundation, or if you call it reception, is the balance between explicit teaching, getting some of those literacy skills in, having a great sensory classroom, but also allowing some play-based learning.
Yeah.
So there's real tension between colleagues about which is, and in my opinion, I think we need to bridge the gap and actually do it together, as in there should be both.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really tricky. We work in some schools, and at the moment they're building in this hour where they're in the early years where they've got like a free play-based learning hour, and it's chaos. It's chaos, and the students are probably they're not like being able to focus on any part of the curriculum during that time, except it's satisfying this other need, this play-based need. So that's something that you and I, maybe we can contact each other and go through some strategies of how you might be able to advocate at the leadership level about some free based learning stuff. Yeah.
Well, I mean, because I see the merit in both, but I've taught English all the way up to year 11, and I were given all the tricky kids who I adored and loved, and they did really well, and the relationship was number one for me too. But my heart wrenched as well because they had missed. I had to work so hard at picking up the gaps.
Yeah.
And my heart broke for them because they were actually really smart kids. And once those gaps were seen to and it was individualized, they excelled. They were great. But play is awesome. But if you're not able to communicate, whether that's orally or written or reading.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kylie, sorry, I've taught those kids in English too, and using music as text and film as text was a great way to connect to some of those kids because they disconnect really quick. So one of the strategies, one of the schools we worked with had, as the students came in of a day, on the board they had 4 different activities the students could do for 15 minutes, and they used it as roll call. So the kids would literally get their name and put it under the activity, and some would sit and do yoga, some would go outside and throw the basketball around. So the teacher was literally collecting the role information while the kids were finding the 4 activities. So you could do passive, you could do
that's perfect. They just
simple.
what their nervous system needs to be able to.
And it gives them agency. Yeah.
I was just going to say one thing. Some of those kids in their earlier years of education might actually not have had the executive functioning skills to learn those writing and reading tasks when everyone else was, which is kind of what we were saying, that we're not going to learn in a linear fashion. Like, just because one kid learns like that doesn't mean the other, which I know that you know, but keeping in mind that even if those kids were forced to sit down and do some of those fundamental skills early on, it might not have stuck because their brain might not have been ready to learn that, because some kids will excel at gross motor skills, other kids will excel at language skills early, and we're trying to work with both at the same time, instead of being like, those children are so lucky to have had you in year 11 in those higher year levels so that you could go back and look at those fundamental skills. They might not have been ready when they were in prep grade 1, grade 2.
Kylie, do you have access to the mentoring programs?
I'm not sure that I've looked at that. The thing is, I believe in play-based learning. I've taught reception. I taught that for many years, but it's like, how do we get the right balance? Because people have different views. Yeah,
totally. And where funding is targeting one area, and then all the research comes up, and then we've got to realign funding to the other area. I understand that. Yeah.
Can I just say something? I'm not part of a school. We homeschool. Um, so I don't think I get the recordings unless they're sent to my email.
You'll get it if it'll be sent to your email. You can also get on the BATForce website
Yeah.
and the school's wellbeing hub. You can click on it. It's open to everybody.
Oh, okay
You're a
then.
school. You're a home school. You're a school. So we don't discriminate on who's a school and who's
So,
not.
and it's been so interesting to listen to the classroom. We've always homeschooled. So to listen to these classroom concepts and things, um, I guess with homeschooling, we do a lot of peer assisted learning and it doesn't separate by age. So I guess to think that I think, oh, that's yeah, I find it really interesting to hear it from the other side, I guess, with the struggles that the classrooms have and things like that. So very interesting. So
Yeah. It's some of the stuff that the schools are doing are great for these kids to be able to engage and learn off each other, learn off peers. And and some of the stuff you probably won't have to deal with some of the struggles that they're facing, but maybe the struggles are in a different area.
mm,
It's probably easier for you to adapt to the learning styles of your kids because you've only got you've got a much smaller sample size than a
yeah,
classroom of
yeah.
25.
I mean, the reason we homeschooled was I have 7 children was because all of my children are neurodiverse. So we did try school, but it just didn't fit. So
Yeah.
we just said, oh, we'll homeschool. So yeah. I've got the last 2 coming through now. So I'm like, yay, I'm nearly there.
Nearly at the end, finish line.
Mhm.
I've
Okay.
been in schools with less kids in a classroom than you've got at home.
Yeah, that's very impressive.
So Angela, look, if you haven't joined our other PDs, jump on that Schools Wellbeing Hub because there's a whole heap of information in there that we, and also, if you are homeschooling as your kids get into the teens, there's the Adulting 101 information in there. It's a whole heap of parenting resources. So for those of you who have to get newsletters up and running, there's lots of information in there. You can just jump straight into a newsletter around specific topics too. Has anyone got any other questions? Because I'm really mindful that Zoe's probably got a busy day and we have got you up early. In saying that, I'm in Queensland. I was up at 5:45 to get this started this morning. So
Well done,
um,
mate.
if there's no other questions, thank you, Zoe, again for coming along. Our relationship with WHR probably started 3 years ago now, because all the work we were doing in schools, we found fundamentally occupational therapy had the answers for a lot of what we were hearing. So we've really leaned on our relationship with WHR Allied Health to make sure that it can continue to build the capacity of our work. So please reach out, look at our resources. Hopefully we'll have another BATPack series up for you again next year. So if there's an issue with this time slot, reach out to us. We know it's not working for everyone, but we know with the EBA, no time is. So at least we've got the recordings that people can then use if they can't do this. So,
Can I
yeah.
just say one more
Yes,
thing,
Zoe?
Lee? I was just going to say, look, it was a lot of content that I've just delivered, and I mean, I could have expanded on any aspect of that in itself. And so I know that it might, for some people, it might have missed the mark in one way, and other people might. I just wanted you to all be able to take something away from whether or not be the neurological development stuff, the sensory stuff, how classrooms have changed, or the strategies. But if there is an area that you wanted to go deeper in, if you could let Lee know, that'd be great, just so that I can be a little bit more targeted in how I'm presenting and what the content is that we're talking about. That'd be great. And in terms of our relationship with BATForce, I feel like OTs, like no one has the one answer, because this is such an evolving situation and everybody's so different. It's really what we're doing with BATForce and with other agents partnerships is really just a collaborative approach, so that we can each learn from each other and work out, look, if we're heading in the right direction, that's the main thing. If we're supporting the learners of today, perfect, because the rates of neurodiversity that we're seeing are just going increasing, the rates of mental illness that we're seeing in the clinic just increasing at a younger age. So if we can try and curb some of that stuff with these education sessions, equipping teachers and families with some of these really small strategies, or giving them really the tools to understand what's going on in young brains, I think it's really helpful for everybody, teachers, parents, agencies. Yeah. So thank you so much for everyone for listening in and getting up. And thanks, Lee, for having me.
No worries. Thanks, Zoe. And thanks everyone for attending. And big shout out to Foxy and Naomi for pulling these together. They look a bit like a duck. They're pretty good on top of water, but they're paddling pretty quick underneath. So well done, everyone. And hopefully we'll see you all next year.
Thank you.
Bye
Thanks,
now.
guys.